Resident Evil 5 was the 2009 installment in the mainline Resident Evil series. It featured Chris Redfield and Sheva Alomar exploring the marshes and caves of Africa with controls to match the original Resident Evil 4, and a whole brownish color scheme that found its way into 99.9% of games in those days. And like every Resident Evil game, there are plenty of crazy things. Here are 8 crazy secrets in Resident Evil 5. Spoilers ahead. Number 1. Guns drawn. Players of Resident Evil 5 will hopefully not grow tired of seeing cutscenes of Chris and Sheva drawing their guns, because when the cutscenes aren't doing the 2000s shaky action movie 360 camera, they are showing Chris and Sheva drawing their guns without shooting to build up the suspense. You will see them draw on Magini, Josh, Irving, empty rooms, Ouroboros guy, Wesker, El Gigante, Wesker on the phone, a giant spider, and more Wesker. Number 2. Boulder Punch. Is it possible to talk about Resident Evil 5 without mentioning the famous Chris Redfield Boulder Punch? First of all, let's have AI do some math calculations. The boulder is significantly bigger than Chris, whose height is around 6 feet or 1.8 meters. Assuming the boulder is 10 feet or about 3 meters, made of hardened lava, it would weigh about 44.5 metric tons. That means Chris's 6 punches would have to average 279,000 pounds of force per punch, or 1.24 million newtons of force, equivalent to the weight of 126,000 kilograms. According to AI, Chris's average punch is roughly equivalent to a school bus crashing into the boulder. Aside from the obvious superhuman strength Chris exhibits during the Boulder Punch, there are at least 2 other amazing things at work here. First of all, we see Chris punching enemies throughout the game and they still get back up, which we know they should not survive because we see them unable to survive a smaller speedboat collision. This suggests Chris is lazy and is tanking the whole game. And the second amazing thing is when the lava chapter starts, you will see Chris moves with the injury animation. This is by default even if his health bar is full, which means he isn't even at full strength when he punches the boulder. Number 3. Jill Free Will. As connoisseurs of Resident Evil 5 know, Jill spends most of the game under the control of some kind of virus mind control device. Somehow, Chris's 1.24 million newtons of strength struggled to pull this thing off, by the way. But during a late scene, Jill shows resistance when Chris says her full name, revealing that she still managed to sometimes regain a moment of free will. Wesker even comments how impressive it is that she was still fighting the virus after such an advanced stage. But this might not be the only time in the game we see her act independent from the mind control. In the scene where Chris and Sheva first encounter Irving, you will first see them engage in some brutal dialogue and bizarre gun pointing in between shots of Irving's questionable haircut. The woman you later find out is Jill comes crashing into the room to rescue Irving. As Chris and Sheva are on the ground from the smoke, we see Irving aim once more with an open shot, but right at that moment, Jill looks back and yanks him out the window before he can get a shot off. Was this a moment of Jill conquering the control device to save Chris and Sheva? Number 4. Sheva. As many players know, Sheva can be more trigger-happy with the herbs than with the rifle, but she also has some other crazy secrets. For example, in the oil refinery, if you reach the first wheel crank and tell Sheva to turn it, she will ask you to cover her from enemy attacks. However, a little Easter egg. If you kill all the enemies in that wave and then ask her to turn the crank, she skips this line of dialogue because there are no enemies from which she needs cover. In the area where you first encounter the liquor monsters, Sheva suggests that you be as quiet as possible since the liquors have poor eyesight. And then, a couple hallways later, when you are trying to abide by that advice, Sheva goes guns blazing. In the marshlands, you will come across an area where Chris and Sheva see that there is a hungry alligator in the water. Most of the time, when there is a prompt, you have the option to turn a crank yourself or command Sheva to do it. Except in this case, when it comes to who turns the crank and who has to go on the raft near the alligator, Sheva leaves you no choice. She is not about to go anywhere near the alligator. You're on your own, Chris. Normally, when you hit the command for Sheva to follow, she will say OK or Roger.
Come on!
Okay,
Come on!
Roger.
However, in the laser puzzle area, she is suspiciously stubborn. Even though there are no enemies around, she completely refuses to listen the entire time.
Sheva!
You can't be serious.
Sheva!
Forget it.
Come on!
Forget it.
Hurry!
You can't be serious.
Hurry!
She just stands on the steps while Chris does all the work on all 3 levels. And then, after the last puzzle is solved, she has the motivation to say, "We got it." Next, there is a scene where you wonder who has worse eyesight between Josh and Sheva in a well-lit room, and they both have trouble making out the identity of the other. When they come across the underground flower garden, Sheva says, "How can these survive underground?" just as she is standing underneath a gigantic ceiling of sunlight coming through. But finally, perhaps Sheva's best line in the whole game is when they first encounter the big insect monsters in the factory and Sheva says, "What manner of beast is that?" Could she be more formal in this moment of arthropod horror? A smoking monster drops out of a cocoon, her adrenaline is on fire, and she says, "What manner of beast is that?" Like, "Cheerio, old chap, would you care for a cup of tea? What manner of beast is that, my good man?" Number 5. Name Easter eggs. The first time Chris and Sheva reach the giant lift, where all the test subjects are on the wall, you can see a couple of funny names if you pause at the right moment. Here you see not Clint Eastwood but Chris Westwood, and then you see not Luke Skywalker but Lark Staywalker. These suspect names make you wonder if some guy in Umbrella's middle management was trying to pad the inventory numbers. Number 6. Worst boss. In what is arguably the worst boss fight in all of Resident Evil might be the Ouroboros boss in the laboratory. You can pelt this guy with bullets for several minutes with infinite ammo and he still won't be killed. The trick is to set him on fire continuously enough to get him to spawn some glowing bulbs that you have to shoot right away before he retracts them and you have to start over. But not only does the game not really make this obvious, but he also has some bulbs that spawn normally, but blowing those up doesn't really do anything other than prevent him from taking a swing at you. You are also supposed to knock over the canisters, so he picks them up, and you can set him on fire by shooting him while he is holding the canister. But sometimes he just walks right past the canister, so the very thing you are supposed to use doesn't even work. Many players have exhausted their ammo wondering how this boss is still standing, or they just gave up and bought the rocket launcher. On top of everything else, if you do use the rocket launcher, all the loot that was in the room disappears when you regain control. No matter how you look at it, this might be the worst boss fight in all of Resident Evil. Number 7. Teleporting key. Early in the game, you will come across a building with a locked door that you can't enter unless you grab the key earlier. Inside this building is the first shotgun. If you haven't grabbed the key, you can backtrack and give Sheva a boost up a ladder that was easily missed. What's especially funny about this is once you give her the boost, you can just leave her behind and run to the shotgun building. As long as she picks up the key before you try the door, you will be able to open it, because it is apparently a teleporting key. Number 8. Chris. Besides the famous Boulder Punch, there is at least one crazy line of dialogue by Chris in this game. In the underground garden, where Sheva did not notice the torrent of sunlight pouring into the room, Chris runs over to a crate and finds the Umbrella logo where he says "Umbrella" and Sheva says "What were they doing there?" and Chris says "I don't know." Mind you, this is a man who has spent his whole career fighting Umbrella. Early in the game, he shows he is aware of the similarities between the situation in Africa and the Kennedy report which dealt with Umbrella from Resident Evil 4. Yet when he sees the Umbrella logo, he has no idea what they could be doing here. No idea if Umbrella is doing bio experiments like they have been doing in every single other situation Umbrella has ever been in. What can be said, at least he has his biceps. And those are 8 crazy secrets in Resident Evil 5. Thank you for watching, always pursue the truth.